it's very easy to respond to these questions later. Trust me, it's like you identify them and it is as if they were some sort of, I don't know, relative to you, because you know how to identify them, how to work it, how to approach it. You basically understand everything, trust me. Okay, so okay, great, we are live. And now let's start with the class. Good. Well, let's go. So let me open here the presentation and let's go directly to our topic tonight. All right, here we are. We're in the reading slides. Let's go. Well, yesterday we discussed the general aspects of the section. I showed you how this works on the simulator. I also, well, show you the charge strategy. Very good, right? Very important. And well, we are going to discuss, as I say, the types of questions tonight for you to have a very good understanding. Now, let me say beforehand that the reason why we can have some sort of list of possible questions in this section is because the way ETS asks for information, it's always similar, although the content is always different. Let me explain this. For example, I remember that when I took the exam last time, I received a reading passage about whales. I remember very well that because it was very difficult for me to understand it. And I struggled a lot. But the idea is that I remember it was about whales. And that passage I received 1 year ago when I took it last time, right, the TOEFL exam, about whales. You are never going to receive it because ETS doesn't repeat material. They constantly create more and more and more material. So the material, the content of the questions is always different, right? If you think about it, because, well, they always create more and more. But how they ask the questions, how do they question you? How do they request information out of you? It's always the same. And that's why we can somehow bring these types of questions to the table, okay? So let us start with the first one. The first question, or the first type of question in the reading section, is this one. It's called the vocabulary question, okay? And in this type of question, these questions are designed to test your knowledge of words or phrases that are commonly used in academic or non-academic contexts. Each vocabulary item consists of a sentence with one word or phrase highlighted. It's a very simple type of question. As you can see, it basically asks you to respond to the question, what does this word mean, right? Or what does space mean? For example, what does, I don't know, objection means? Or what does, I don't know, whatever, any word like, what does jungle mean? Whatever, right? Let me show you an example of this question. Okay, here I am. Good, so somebody else got into the reunion. Great, Elsa. So great, thank you for joining, Elsa. So we are discussing the types of questions. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining. So I was mentioning that we are discussing right now the types of questions, as I said yesterday. And the first type of question that we are discussing with Claudia is this one. Okay, the first type of question you're going to find in this section is the vocabulary question. Now, this vocabulary question, it's basically, as you can see, a set of questions that are going to test your ability to know the meaning of certain words and phrases that are commonly used in academic and non-academic material. Now, each vocabulary item consists of a sentence with one word or phrase highlighted. Let me show you an example, and this type of question is going to be very much clarified. Okay, let me show you how it looks like. For example, look at my screen right now. Here I have an example of this type of question. So whenever you see something similar on the exam, then you can identify it and say to you, oh, this is a vocabulary question. Okay, so look at the question. It says, what does the word distant mean in this context? And as I say, apart from the question itself, they do something very interesting here. They give you the word, right? As you can see, it's asking for the word distant. What does the word distant mean in this context? But they also give you some sort of background or context, as it says here, for you to understand the meaning of the word. Because you know that defining isolated words is very much subjective, right? Because it's difficult to find meaning to words when they are isolated. But when they are working in contexts, it's always possible to find the correct definition of the word. So as I say, they are going to give you this sentence, and the word they are asking you for, it's going to be placed anywhere, okay, in that sentence that is, as I say, some sort of background or context. Now, let us read the sentence. It says, it's difficult to get young people to plan for their old age, which seems very distant to them. This is, as I say, the sentence or the phrase they give you as a context. And as you can see, the question is merely asking you about the word distant, right? It's a vocabulary question. It's asking you, what does the word distant mean in this context? And notice that the word distant here is highlighted with red. And the reason why that happens is that in the exam, dear students, the word they ask you for is also highlighted, okay? That's the reason why I highlighted it here with red. But on the exam, it's normally highlighted with gray or any black or darkened color, okay? Normally. So, but in this case, it's highlighted with red. I think the idea is there, right? That in this case, they are going to give you this sentence, and anywhere within the sentence, you're going to get a question, a word that they are going to be asking you for. What does that word mean? Okay, the one that they highlight, in this case, distant. And then, of course, as I told you yesterday, you have a multiple choice menu. And here you can respond to any of these answers: impossible, far away, observable, or fearful. Now, before I tell you what is the correct answer and how to respond this, let me show you some recommendations, okay, for the vocabulary question. So how can you respond? Even if you think that you know what the word could mean, remind that context is the transcendental source that gives each word its meaning. I think there is a very wrong practice that high schools have been teaching long time ago, which is to say to the students, whenever you do not understand a word, go to the dictionary and look for it. That is a mistake because a dictionary is merely a reference. The transcendental source that gives each word its meaning, it's the context in which it's placed, right? Is as I say, the prefacing and posterior content in that word, or that is part of that portion, that gives the word's meaning, because how applied the word is, or how is that word applied, is what defines what the word means, okay? So as I say, for example, maybe at some point you're gonna get a question, a question that tells you what does this word mean? And you know that word by memory because you read it in the dictionary. You say, okay, it means this because you saw it in the dictionary. But be careful. That is not a very good strategy, okay? Because as I say, the question is asking you about the word in its context. And this is because, as I say, it's not the dictionary what defines words. The dictionary is merely a set of different or possible meanings for the word. But what defines the meaning is the context in which the word is placed. So every single time, in order to respond to this question well, read the entire sentence they give you, as I say, because they give you the sentence and then the highlighted word. Read the entire sentence for you to understand what that word means in the actual context, okay? It's very important for you to do this. If you do not do so, you're going to get, as I say, wrong responses because you're going to be trusting in your memory instead of the actual transcendental source, that is context, okay? What else? Read the word in its context to know its true meaning. This is good because, as I say, the context is everything. So, for example, let us come back here to this question and let me show you this. What does the word distant mean in this context, in the sentence we have? It's difficult to get young people to plan for their old age, which seems very distant to them. Now, if you think about this sentence, what they are telling you is to think about when you were a child and your grandma came to you and told you, hey, have you ever thought about getting married? And you said to your grandmother, oh, come on, grandmother, I'm so young to be married with somebody. That's very distant. Don't bother me, right? Something like that. What does the word mean in that context? Because that is basically the context they are giving you, right? It's difficult to get young people to plan for their old age. If you think about that sentence like, come on, man, I'm never going to get married because that is so distant from me. I'm just 15 years old and I'm going to get married at 40, who knows? What you are saying, right, in that context, in this context they are giving you, is that distant means far away, right? Because you say when you are young, nah, come on, that's very distant. So in this context, right, that they are giving you, the word distant means far away. But notice that this same word placed in other contexts could have meant something totally different. For example, if I say being the president of my country, it's very distant for me. What would I be saying? I repeat, what would I be saying? What would I be saying is that it's impossible for me to be the president of my country, right? Because if I say, come on, man, being the president of my country is very distant. I'm not meaning far away, because I do not know if in the future I'm going to be the president of my nature, excuse me, of my nation. What I'm trying to say is that if I mention, being the president is very distant to me, what I'm trying to convey is, hey, it's very difficult for me to be president. It's going to be super, I don't know, complex, right? So notice that in two different contexts, the word distant means something completely different. And this is what I'm warning you about. Please use the context to understand the true meaning of the word, because dictionaries, as I say, are merely references, possible answers to those words. But if you want to get the correct one, always look at the context. Okay, so as I say, in this case, it's far away, because the context tells us all, and we are able to respond to this question very much successfully. Any question, dear students, with regard to this first type of question, dear Claudia and Elsa? Any question about the type of question we have here before us? Anything?
Which is the appropriate answer in this question?
Far away, because as I say, it's like when you were a child, if your grandma came to you and told you, when do you think to get married? You say, come on, grandma, that's very distant to me. That is the context that this sentence is trying to portray, right? Because it says it's difficult to get young people to plan for their old age, which seems very distant to them. So as we are, as I say, talking about people who are young and think of adult things as very, very much distant and separated from them, the word distant in this context means far away, right? Because you say, come on, grandma, that's very distant, far away. In this case, but in other contexts, if I say I'm going to be the president of Bolivia, but that's very distant, what I'm saying is, come on, I'm going to be the president of Bolivia, but that's very impossible, right? I'm trying to make a point that like, I'm not going to be the president, right? In this case, it's far away. Yeah, is that fine, dear Elsa?
Thank you, that's clear.
Okay, very good. Great. So I guess there are no more questions in this type of questions. So let's go to the second one. Okay, it's very interesting, this one. So this one is called the purpose question, okay? And the purpose question, dear students, will test your ability to understand why a certain idea or argument has been used in the text. They will ask you to draw conclusions about the information that has been stated in the passage. You need to locate a paragraph and read briefly to get the purpose, okay? It's a very easy type of question. Let me please show you this. So it says, why does the author mention the survival of snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodiles in paragraph 3? And here we have the paragraph that this question is making reference to. Let us read it together. It says, if true though, why did cold-blooded animals such as snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodiles survive the freezing winters and torrid summers? These animals are at the mercy of the climate to maintain a livable body temperature. It's hard to understand why they would not be affected, whereas dinosaurs were left too crippled to cope, especially if, as some scientists believe, dinosaurs were warm-blooded. Critics also point out that the shallow seaways had retreated from and advanced on the continents numerous times during the Mesozoic. So why did dinosaurs survive the climatic changes associated with the earlier fluctuations, but not with this one? Although initially appealing, the hypothesis of a simple climatic change related to sea levels is insufficient to explain all the data. So look at this paragraph. This is the paragraph number 3 of a reading passage that I derived this question from. So look at this. As I told you, this is a purpose question. This is the second type of question you're going to find. And the reason why this is called purpose question is because it asks you, right? Why does the author mention this? And if you think about it, what the question is telling you is, there must be a reason, right? There must be a reason why the author places this particular sentence here. There must be a reason why the author, the person who wrote this passage, is stating this in his document. There is a reason, right? Because human beings always do everything with a reason, right? We are rational beings, therefore we need to have some sort of reason. So that is what the question is asking, like, what is the reason that the author has for placing this sentence within the passage? What was he trying to do with this sentence? That's the question, okay? In simple words. Now, as I say, we have some answers, and we have to look for the one that, of course, as I say, explains the why. Why is this author placing this sentence within the paragraph? Let us look at the recommendations before we start, okay? So to effectively respond this type of question, you must ask yourself, how does the alluded portion affect the whole text? It might initiate, it might conclude, support, or discard something, okay? This is very important. Now think about this, dear students. As I say, how can you know why is the author placing that sentence in the passage? By looking at the very simple and obvious fact that every single sentence, right, in our writing is trying to do something. For example, let's postulate that I'm trying to break out with my girlfriend. And what I say it's, you know, honey, it's not your fault, it's mine. What am I trying to say if I say that? Like, you know, it's not your fault, it's mine. Or it's not you, it's me, right? What am I trying to say? I'm trying to convey that she is not guilty for our breakup, that she's not responsible. It's just me. I have some sort of trouble, but it's not her, right? That's what I'm trying to say, to make her feel good. Like, it's not you, it's me. I have something that doesn't allow me to be in this relationship anymore. So if that's the case, think about that sentence like, no, it's not you, it's me. Why are you including it? The reason why you do it is because you want to, as I say, maybe you want to initiate a conversation, you want to conclude something, you want to support an idea, you want to discard an idea, or maybe you want to postulate something to make a point, right? As I am in this case, you know, sorry, but it's me, or excuse me, it's you. It's not you, it's me. If I'm saying that to I don't know, to my girlfriend, what I'm trying to say is, you know, I want to make the point that the reason why we're breaking up is not because of you or something you did wrongly, but just because I'm not comfortable, right? That's what I'm doing. So as I say, in order to respond to this type of question, think about that. So what is the alluded portion or the sentence we have read doing in the entire passage? It is initiating something. Is it concluding something? Is it supporting something? Is it discarding something? Is it postulating something? What is it doing, right? What is that question doing? That's what you have to understand, okay? Now, second thing is to pay attention to the alluded portions mode. You know what is the alluded portions mode, right? The mode is if the question is, or the sentence or the word is interrogative, is exclamative, is subjunctive, and so forth and so on. Okay, so for example, let us come back here to my passage. So first of all, as I say, it's very important that when you're responding this type of question, you look at the second rule as well. Like, what is the mode of the portion? Is it a question? Is it an exclamation? Is it screaming something? It's exclaiming something? Is it subjunctive? That is to say, it's talking about possibilities, or it is indicative? It's talking about facts. It's talking about things that are true indeed. What is my reading passage all about? About any of this, right? So you think about that and you say, all right, you know, if, for example, my sentence says, as a question, when was the last time, I don't know, Sydney appeared on the screen? Of course, what I'm going to do is to pay attention to the type of mode that the sentence has. In this case, as I am making a question, it is interrogative. So if they're asking me for the word, I don't know, for the word anywhere, think about anywhere in that sentence. Like, I'm going to create another sentence. If you say, for example, what is, I don't know, what is Carlos' favorite movie, right? If that's a question. And if I ask you, what does the word favorite, or what does the word movie mean in that sentence? Do you want to say a movie? It's a film, something that people have acted and they have edited it, etc., etc. So as I say, in order to understand this type of questions, look at the mode of the sentence. If it is interrogative, if it is subjunctive, if it is talking about questions, responses, because it gives you a very good idea of what this passage is all about, okay? Or what this sentence is all about, all right? And that's how you respond to these questions. Let us look at the example I have here on my screen. It says, if true though, why did cold-blooded animals such as snakes, lizards, toads, and crocodiles survive the freezing winters and the torrid summers? That is where our sentence is placed. And if you look at the sentence that it is asking us for, it says, what does the author mention the survival of snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodiles in paragraph 3? And that's right here in the beginning of our paragraph. It says, what they call blooded animals such as snakes, lizards, turtles, and crocodiles survive freezing winters and torrid summers, right? Look at it. So what it's doing is, it's a question. So whenever you receive a question and your word is within a question, great, because you know that a question is merely for one purpose or for two purposes. First, for sincerely asking something, and secondly, for making a point, right? As if you were being ironic or something. So if you look at this and your word or the sentence you have to find in order to get the purpose of this sentence and word, the only thing you do is to merely, as I say, look at the mode. If it is a question, it's casting doubt upon something. If it is an affirmation, well, it's very much, interested about that, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So look at that. The first thing I noticed, that it is a question, and therefore, everything within that question symbol is going to be something that is trying to raise a point for other people to respond as. Okay? So, and secondly, look at what this sentence is doing in the entire passage. For example, if I continue reading, it says, these animals are at the mercy of the climate to maintain a livable body temperature. It's hard to understand why they will not be affected, whereas dinosaurs were left to cripple. Okay, so it says critics has also pointed out in advance the shallow seaways have retreated from and advanced on the continents numerous times during the Mesozoic. Okay, so although initially appealing, the hypothesis is simple of a simple climatic change is sufficient to explain all the data. So look at that. The rest of the sentences after the thing about crocodiles and turtles here, the last thing is basically, well, if you think about it, is basically some sort of code, okay? It's some sort of code. And what you have to do at the end, dear students, is to simply look at this question and to ask those two questions, okay? So what is the effect this is causing? And if you notice, what is the effect this sentence is causing in the entire passage? Very simple. The effect is that you are reading something that questions a theory, right? Because at the beginning, they have a theory. They are talking about some cold-blooded animals like snakes, like frogs, like winters, etc., etc. Excuse me, turtles, not winters, or etc., etc. And they are asking you, do you know what happens? You know what happens about this? That they were very weak animals, like turtles, snakes, lizards. They were very lame and boring animals. They were not powerful, but they didn't get extincted. What about dinosaurs? They were powerful. They were warm-blooded. And anyways, they just got totally whipped out. What happened? So as you can see, this sentence is trying to make that point. It's trying to say, you know, what happens? Like, shouldn't it be advanced nowadays? Our consumption of I don't know, of TV or any other thing related to this. And what you're going to ask at the end, or what you're going to ask at the end is, does this have something to do like with my entire passage? And you say, yes, it has something to do, because it tells you the hypothesis is incorrect. Okay. So the question, once again, after you review those criteria, is to ask yourself, why does the author mention the survival of snakes, lizards, and turtles? And the response is very simple. To argue that dinosaurs may have become extinct because they were not cold-blooded animals, to question the adequacy of the hypothesis that climatic change related to sea levels caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, to present examples of animals that could maintain a livable body temperature not easily than dinosaurs, to support a hypothesis that these animals were not as sensitive to climate changes in the Cretaceous period as they are today. So as you can see, what this sentence at the beginning is doing is trying to set the background for you to think about, hey, they are telling me about everything, but they are not telling me, for example, they are not telling me in this case, well, what could it be? I'm going to rephrase my sentence. So what they're telling you is, you know, dinosaurs were cold-blooded, but they survived the extinction. What about dinosaurs who were more powerful, more strong than them? Shouldn't they also get extinct? And what is the passage is telling you? Like, are these two things true? Like, is it true? And you say, yeah, like totally. Because as I mentioned, it is something that I found on the internet, and it's a very good thing. Okay. So in this case, the correct answer, by the way, dear students, is to argue that dinosaurs may have become extinct because they were not cold-blooded animals. Okay. Oh, sorry, that is not the question. The correct response is to question the adequacy of the hypothesis that climatic change related to sea levels can cause the extinction of dinosaurs. Why? Because as at the beginning of the reading passage, dear students, is if you notice, as if they were trying to make you interested about the topic, right? In this part. Sorry. No, it's here. It's as if they were trying to immerse you in this first part, right, of the reading task number 1. And then they ask you a bunch of questions. So what they're trying to do is to surprise you. Best thing, never to leave any question blank, but to respond quickly and, of course, having started, okay? Very good. So in this case, the correct answer is to argue that dinosaurs may have become extinct because they were not cold-blooded animals, okay? To question the adequacy of the hypothesis that climatic change related to a hypothesis caused the extinction of dinosaurs, or the example, or excuse me, to present examples of animals that could maintain a livable body, or to support hypothesis that these animals were not as sensitive to climate change in the Cretaceous period of time. So you're going to notice very commonly, dear students, that people, when they are taking the exam, what they do in this type of question is they go for the one they consider to be more correct. And although, of course, there's going to be at some point a question that obligates you to do that, what you have to do instead, dear students, is to directly ask, okay, yourself this question. And trust me, it's going to be very easy to respond, okay? So, well, in this case, the correct response, as I say, it's number 2. The question, to question the adequacy of the hypothesis that climatic change related to sea levels caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, because at first, that part of the reading passage we read was about what was this method, right? And then what was this phenomena, like the dinosaurs? And then the rest of the paragraph is questioning that. It's like saying, it just doesn't make sense, because if dinosaurs were extincted by this very insignificant storm, why didn't these weak animals like snakes and lizards and turtles did survive? What happened, right? So they are telling you at the end, sadly, this is totally wrong. You cannot think that this is true. Choose any answer, right? That is what ETS is telling you. But of course, you're always going to get an answer, because as I told you, it's better not to press the previous button. Okay? Is there any question, dear students, with regard to the practicing the purpose question? Something that I could clarify? Please stop. Is there any question about this type of question? Something that I could clarify? No questions? Okay. Very good. So no questions, I think. Beautiful. Let us continue, okay? Third type of question. Here I am. This is way easier, trust me. So in inference questions, you will be asked to respond what does a specific word refer to in its context, okay? Pronoun, in its context, and they could be subject pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, possessive adjectives, and other reference words. Now, let me be very clear when I do this, okay? What this passage is asking you about is, to locate a word, but it's not going to be a common word, and you're not going to have to merely define it. What you're going to do when you are in this part of the exam is you're going to read, or they're going to give you some, some manner to know like the words they want you to read. And once you wrote a very difficult word, they're going to tell you, hey, this word is wrong, etc. But in order to avoid that type of error and, of course, to waste time, this is my technique for this type of question. And notice, please, here that this is very similar to the vocabulary question. Yes, it is. But the most important difference is that in this version, like in this part of the exam, we are being asked about pronouns. That is to say, things that can be pasted once again, right? With regard to, of course, a person, right, or an individual. That's what I mean. Like pasted in the sense that it can be realized in a particular sentence. But if it is not that case, recycled or utilized, you're going to have demonstrative pronouns like these, those, this, and that. Then possessive adjectives, like, for example, it or there, or other reference words like the former, the later, one, once, another, other, others, a lot of possible answers, okay? So as I say, the idea is that one of these words you're going to be asked about, just as in the vocabulary question. And as I mentioned, the only difference between this type of question and the vocabulary one is that in this one, you're not going to be responding about normal words, what a particular word means, that is a normal and common word, but about pronouns, subject pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, possessive adjectives, and other reference words as well, okay? That's how it works. So let me show you an example. It says here, the word day in paragraph 3 refers to, and here we have the paragraph 3, okay? Let us read together. It says, economic contact between Native Americans and Europeans can be traced back to the English and French fishermen off the coast of Canada in the 1500s. They traded guns and other weapons for beaver fur. Okay. So as you can see here, this is asking you about the word day. That is also, by the way, highlighted, okay? All these type of questions, like the vocabulary one, and this one we are talking about right now, that is the reference question, they always highlight to you the word they're asking you for. This is for facility, I guess, like they're trying to make the best experience to their test takers. So great, right? That's a plus for us. So the idea is that, as you can see, we have the word day, and it's asking you, what does the word day means in paragraph 3? Because of course, this type of word, as this demonstrative pronouns like they, are repeated in several passages, several books, etc. So it's very important for people to understand that we can connect with other people by understanding this type of word that is very generic, okay? And apart from that, of course, to make some sort of adjustment to your career, etc. If you're planning to study, systems engineering or any type of engineering, right? So look at it. It's asking about the word day that is highlighted there on the screen. And what it's asking is, the word day in paragraph 3 refers to, and of course, we'll have to read the third paragraph as we have done, and then we'll have to look at the answers. It says, English and French fishermen, beavers, European, traits, and characteristics, okay? This is very, very important. So as I mentioned, the idea is that in order to respond to this type of question, dear students, what you have to do is to think about the last idea that the author had in mind when he wrote that word. Let me show you how. Look at my reading passage, right? And if you look at it, you're gonna notice that here I have, a passage that talks about the contact between Native Americans and, in this case, Europeans too, right? So what happens that the idea, dear students, for you to know right now is that in order to understand this type of question and to correctly respond it is, as I say, to think about the last idea the author had on mind when he wrote this. So let us go step by step, deconstructing the sentence we have before the word day, and that way we're going to be able to understand what the word day means, okay? For example, in this case, economic contact between Native Americans and Europeans can be traced back to the English and French fishermen. So what am I trying to say there? Or what does the author is trying to say in that part? What the author is trying to say is, what happens is that there was some sort of interaction between the Native Americans and the Europeans, okay? That's the first point of his thought, because we're trying to deconstruct his mind, right? Then he goes on and continues talking about that same interaction. He says, Europeans and French fishermen, I'm gonna read again. And Europeans can be traced back to the English and French fishermen of the coast of Canada. So if at the beginning, the idea of the author was to talk about the general aspects of his paper, and now he's talking about the specifics. That is to say, he's discussing, for example, I don't know. Well, I'm going to leave that out. So as you can see here, in this case, at the first place, I have nothing here particularly of that part, but well, as I say, you have to look at the last idea in order not to make it complicated. For example, what is the last idea that the author has on mind when he writes this word? It's very simple. If you look at it, at first, the professor or the author was talking about this interaction between Native Americans and Europeans, but he never said what type of indigenous people and what type of Europeans, right? Because there were a lot of different Native Americans, and of course, they all had to fight for their liberty. So what this is telling you is, the author is trying to tell you is, there was a couple of fellas who were very much brave, and they went to the other world in order, South America, etc., or America in this case, to make contact with people, etc., etc. And they're telling you they traded guns and other weapons for beaver fruit. So what does the word they mean in this case? And given that we have read this passage together and we have understood, right, that what they are trying to do is to demonstrate or what the reading passage is trying to do, dear students, is that well, fishermen, French fishermen and English fishermen were the ones to make contact with the Native Americans, because as I say, it's not as if all the Native Americans and all the Europeans came to America, right? Or to North America and the US. No, what happens is that when there were no, in this case, overseers from the king, it says here that, well, France was a beautiful place, and then English and Canada came to their rescue, and well, they started to trade with them, right? They gave weapons instead of guns and other, instead of being received with, I don't know, in this case, well, it is not specified here what they were trading, but instead of trading any other thing, right? So, and if you think about this, the last idea the professor had in mind was the idea of English and French fishermen, because that's the last thing he was thinking about. He was saying, you know, all these artists, they are like very, very much innovative, etc. But there are some codes that were done by other people in other countries, and he showed us, right, that well, that we had these Europeans from England and also from France who were able, dear students, to trade this with the indigenous people, and that way they facilitated, excuse me, that trade with other civilizations, right? So as you can see, the word they here means English and French fishermen, because that's the last idea the professor had in mind when he wrote this essay. He was trying to say, you know, it's very important nowadays, the contact or the economic contact between Native Americans, because it was so, excuse me, since I don't know, since the 5 or the 1500s. Why? Because well, for the very simple reason that they were, right, as I say, trading very good products instead, etc., etc. Okay, so in this case, the correct answer is English and French fishermen. As simple as that. Simply ask yourself, what was the last idea the professor had in mind? And when you find that, the last idea he had in mind, trust me, you're not going to have any problem to understand the meaning of this word. And at the end, you also have these recommendations, okay? As your word will be highlighted, you must read 1 or 2 previous sentences to find the context and the reasoning train or the idea of the portion. As I told you, you have to be able to locate these words. Now, normally the TOEFL exam does give you a chronometer for you to see, right? But it could also happen that your test taker doesn't have one. So please be prepared and start to practice for this exam, because it's going to be very difficult to understand it if you do not do so, okay? Trust me with that. So is there any question with this type of question, dear students? Anything that I can clarify? Please tell me. Elsa and Claudia, what about question number 3? Reference questions?
Maybe you mean that interference type of question will be regarding to grammar all of the time?
Yeah, I mean, grammar, yes, but mostly about what the author has in mind. For example, let me give you this illustration. If I tell you, today I am going to go to the park, and tomorrow I'll go to have dinner. I'm going to repeat. If I tell you, today I'm going to go to the park, and tomorrow I'm going to go and have dinner. What is my reasoning train? What is the order of ideas I'm presenting? The first idea I give is today I'm gonna go to the park, right? Today. And tomorrow, I'm changing now to a new topic, a new idea on my mind. Tomorrow, I'm gonna go and have dinner. That process of changing ideas in a very much monotonous and repetitive way is something that everybody does. Because when you speak, for example, when you ask me that question, you were speaking that way. You started with an idea, you moved to another one, to another one, to another one, until everything made sense for me to understand you. And then here, that is exactly the same. The author starts his essay or his writing with a particular idea, and he continues with more and more and more ideas. So what I'm saying is that the last idea he has in mind, in my case, for example, what was the last idea? That tomorrow I'll go and have dinner, right? Because what was my first idea? today I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to go to the park, for example. But tomorrow I'm going to go and have dinner. That will be the last idea I get in my mind, because tomorrow I'm going to go and have dinner. But the first idea I had when I started to talk was, tonight I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to go to the park, right? You notice what I mean? Like the last idea he has on mind is going to be the response for this question, because it's asking you, what does the word day mean? And it's asking you about the next word of the next sentence it's going to write. You notice what I mean? Is it more clear?
Yes.
Okay. You're gonna notice. Anyways, like we're gonna practice this, and you're gonna notice what I say. But it's a matter of, as I say, the context, basically, the context, and trying to understand that reasoning trend that I say. Think about it. Think about it tonight. Like thinking, when you're speaking, you always go idea by idea, right? One idea, then another idea, another idea. So the last idea the author has on mind when he's writing the word you are asked for is going to be the answer. In this case, what was the last idea the author had on mind when he wrote day? The last idea he had on mind was French fishermen and English fishermen went to Canada in the 1500s. So when the author writes next or day, I'm sorry, in the next sentence, what was he thinking about? He was thinking about the English and the French fishermen, because that was the last idea he had on mind. Another idea he had on mind previously was this one, that there was an interaction between Native Americans and Europeans. But in that first idea he has in the paragraph, he's merely talking about generic Europeans. But when he goes to the next idea in the paragraph, can be traced back to the English and French fishermen, you notice that now he's talking about specific Europeans, English and French fishermen. It's not about just Europeans anymore, but specific Europeans. So what you do is you take that last idea he has on mind, and you continue. You say, okay, so if the last idea he had on mind was English and French fishermen, and you know, of course, that the word they means people, you have to say, okay, what his meaning is English and French fishermen, not Europeans or beavers, right? Because beaver is not even mentioned until that point. So yeah, that's the idea basically. Okay. Very good. So let me give you another recommendation here. Well, I think it's fine. Okay. So the next type of question, all right? We have seen the first, the second, the third one. Now the fourth one. In the type of reading inference questions, dear students, you will be asked to reason and draw a rational inference that could be made out of a whole paragraph or a little portion. It says here inference question, right? Do not forget that an inference is simply a conclusion or assertion that could logically follow from a determined action, event, or circumstance. For example, let me tell you this illustration. What happens if Sunday, one friend of yours who always dressed very colorful clothes, he always dressed, I don't know, green pants and white shoes and very much, I don't know, light colors on his t-shirts, whatever, starts to drastically and spontaneously dress totally in blank, or totally in black, excuse me, in black, not blank, but black. What happens if you see that, like somebody who used to dress colorfully, spontaneously and suddenly begins to dress totally in dark? And you see that same person writes on his cell phone, on his social media, I miss you very much. Given those two information sources you have, that this person suddenly, when he always dressed very colorfully before, and now he's dressing in black, and he wrote on his social media, on his Facebook, whatever, I miss you very much, what would you infer? What would be your inference of those two different informations? That of course that person, yes, tell me.
Maybe some close family died.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, very good, Elsa. That's the idea. Very good. So yeah, as Elsa says, probably somebody very nearby him or her died. And that's the reason why he suddenly started to dress in black, because in South America and Central America, we have that tradition, right? To dress in black. When somebody very much nearby to us dies because we want to demonstrate our pain, right, and suffering. So given those informations, like the first thing about his dressing and the second one about the message he wrote on his Facebook, you can infer and say, okay, probably somebody died and he's sad. And that will be an inference, yes, because that is, as I say, a rational conclusion you make out of a certain information. But what about if I tell you a second option and I tell you the reason why he's dressing in black is because aliens came to his house and stole all his colorful clothes? Will that be a rational conclusion? Of course not, right? Because, I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? To say aliens came to his house and they stole everything he had in his wardrobe, and now he basically was left without anything, and now he has to dress merely in black because of that. It's just, it's nonsensical. It's preposterous. Nonetheless, the first option to believe, hey, somebody died probably, that's rational. That's an inference because it's a rational conclusion. The other one is just your imagination. You say aliens, right? I mean, obviously something ridiculous. So in this case, we are going to make inferences. Remember that here in the passages, we have a lot of information. And what we're going to do in this type of question is to infer, to make rational conclusions out of the information they give us in the passages. As simple as that. Okay, for example, look at this question. Which of the following can be inferred about Melville's poetry? And here we have, of course, the passage about Melville. It says, until the 1850s, Herman Melville primarily published novels, including Moby Dick, which would later become one of America's most famous and beloved novels. His novels, however, had extremely low sales, and Melville had to quit writing novels because no publisher would agree to print his books. In an effort to make more money from his writing, Melville chose to publish some poetry instead. Poetry was extremely popular and sold well in 19th century America, so Melville expected to make a profit from his first book of poems. These poems, however, were as unpopular as his novels and sold scarcely any copies. Okay, so out of all that information we get here, which of the following can be inferred about Melville's poetry? And here we have the answers. Now, let me give you some recommendations before. Don't forget that although you are asked to infer something, this doesn't mean you can separate yourself from the passage and let your imagination to fly. You must infer, yes, but you must do it only with the information provided in the passage. Notice what I told you is that an inference is a conclusion we make out of certain information we have. That means that we are always going to have the information or data we have received as the basis for inferring something. We cannot simply say whatever we think and imagine, because that is not an inference, as I told you with the example of aliens. That is not an inference because we don't have any type of information or data that suggests, in the case of our friend, right, that starts to suddenly dress in fully black, we don't have any type of information or data that suggests to us that aliens came to his house and stole his clothes. We don't have any information like that or any data, but we do have information and data to conclude that somebody died in his family because he wrote a message on his Facebook. And in South America, we have this tradition to use very much dark colors when we have suffered a lot in the last times, whatever. So we have information that somehow supports our conclusion. So what I'm trying to say is that when you're going to make an inference, dear students, you have to let yourself be guided by the information you receive. You cannot infer about whatever, or you cannot make any type of inference. Your inference must always be justified in some information you have there. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, which of these ones is the correct answer? A, it was not as well written as Melville's novels. B, it was written primarily in iambic pentameter. C, it did not yield a significant profit for Melville, or it was Melville's only possible way of making money. Which one? For example, the first one, it was not as well written as Melville's novel, is not the correct answer. Why? For the very simple reason, dear students, that in this particular answer, we don't have any justification in the passage to say, the quality of Melville's poetry was worse, right, or something. So in this case, Claudia says C. We're going to get to that. So the idea is that A, for example, is not correct. Why? Because as you can see, nothing in the passage tells us about the quality of Melville's works. nothing is discussing any type of data related to that issue. So we cannot infer something about the quality of his writing, because in our passage, nothing informs us about that. If the passage told us something like, I don't know, people started to criticize Melville's writings because they lacked quality, then we could infer, okay, it was not as well written as Melville's novels, but as nothing in the passage says that, we cannot infer it. What about B? It was written primarily in iambic pentameter. Once again, you cannot infer that because nothing here in the passage talks about the material or the surface in which he wrote his poems or whatever. And for example, think about the possibility that you are somebody who knows about Melville. Maybe you love to read his books, whatever. So you know that this actual response, like B, is true. And you say, hey, but it is actually true that he wrote his novels and works in iambic pentameter. So you say, this must be the correct answer because I know this. No. Why? Because once again, in this question, we are inferring. And here, the reading passage doesn't say anything about the type of material he used. So even although you know that a correct answer here, or excuse me, one of these answers is correct, because of information you previously knew, you shouldn't use that as your criteria or your basis to make the inference. The only valid criteria and basis to make the inference is the material ETS gives you, that is the passage. But if the passage doesn't tell you or suggest something like that, you cannot infer that even if you know it externally, okay? So this is not a correct answer. And C, as Claudia said, is the correct answer. Why? It says it did not yield a significant profit for Melville. Are we justified in the passage to infer that? Yes, let me show you why. If you look at, for example, here the paragraph, it says, his novels, however, had extremely low sales. And Melville had to quit writing those novels because nobody would agree to print his books. And look at this especially. In an effort to make more money from his writing, Melville chose to publish poetry instead, right? So what this is telling us is, sadly, Melville didn't sell well his work, and he was having some money-related issues. He didn't have money because nobody wanted to purchase his books. What did he do? He started to choose or to publish poetry instead. Why? Because Melville expected to make a profit from his first book of poems. But what happened, sadly? These poems, however, were as unpopular as his novels. That is to say, nobody wanted to purchase them. So if nobody wanted to purchase his novels, and therefore he didn't receive money because of that, what can you infer if nobody also wanted to buy his poetry? That, of course, he continued to have economic-related issues. That is to say, he did not yield a significant profit, right? He didn't yield a significant profit for Melville, his writing in poetry. The passage tells us, is suggesting that to us, and that's how you make the inference, okay? Very good. Is there any question about this type of question? Anything that I could clarify here? Please tell me. Questions? No? Okay, I think it's clear then. So we're going to stop here. Tomorrow we're going to continue. We don't have a lot of questions to discuss anymore, but anyways, we're going to continue tomorrow, okay? So as I said, tomorrow I'm going to send you as well more practices and things for you to go about applying what we're learning. But until that, we're going to stop here, okay? So please, I'm going to take your assistance now. And as I do that, please tell me with your kind responses, okay, to our traditional poll. And then I'm going to call out your name, okay? So please help me with that. Where am I? Here. Okay. Or if you have any question, please feel free to say it. Right. So we have Elsa Maria.
Present.
Thank you very much, Elsa. And finally, we have Claudia Hernandez.
Here.
Thank you very much. Great, there you are. So, well, tomorrow I'm gonna continue and finalize with this, and then we're gonna practice, okay? So please don't miss tomorrow's class and have a fantastic night, okay? Thank you very much for being here with me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye, see you. Thank you.